Hello, and welcome to the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast. This is the podcast where together we put together a one-page comic that did not exist before we started talking. We have guests of all sorts, artists, writers, any kind of creator. They're welcome to join us and get a page together. And it's between me, Roberto, and a guest. So let me explain who I am. My name's Adriano. You can find me at Pesto Comics on all of the socials or pestocomics.com. Chances are I have something either in pre-launch or on Kickstarter live right now. This will be coming out mid-September. Very likely that the sequel to Naked Kaiju Woman is live right now or in pre-launch, just about to launch. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to the artist on the show, Roberto. Roberto, let them know who you are, what you're up to.
Hi, my name is Roberto Viacava. You can find me on my webpage, robertoviacavaillustration.com. And I don't know what I'm doing on September, so you put there on my webpage. And I have to say that you've been doing that because I have seen the stats on the page and they are ramping up. So thank you very much for everyone that goes to my page.
Wonderful. It's working. People are actually checking it out. That's good. It's good news. And it's because of the wonderful art you're doing on the show for sure. So with that, we have a wonderful guest today. Hopefully we can have the same effect on all of Luke's work. So Luke, please introduce yourself to everyone. Let them know what you're up to.
Everyone, my name is Luke Herr, he, they. I'm on most online as Koltreg, that's Koltreg. I am a comic writer, editor, project manager. Right now it's been kind of slow because I've been out of regular work and, you need money to make comics or you need time to devote into getting money from people for comics. Last year in September, I dropped like 7 new comics from a full illustrated novel thing called Deer Hunting that is primarily available either through Hunting Me Down or if you're in Finland, it is out through Zoom Teufel Press, which is unhelpful. I've been making comics since I was like 15, which 20 years ago. And yeah, I've done a lot of stuff from hand-drawn journal comics that I wrote and drew to I have a printer sheet actually behind me in the studio from Heroes International #1 that the publisher was like, hey, we're going to do really amazing things. And then Diamond did not pick up the book. So all that Diamond news has me kind of like, look what's happening now. So, I love comics. I enjoy helping people. I am frequently on Reddit giving advice to people. And I've even made some videos on a YouTube channel on writing comics, less of the dialogue and more of how do you become approachable when it comes to making comics and finding partners who are maybe going to be willing to take a chance on you, especially if you do not have money, which I think is one of those things that a lot of young creators need to hear and do not want to hear.
Yes, it's one of the facts of making comics is that it's very expensive. And I'm very impressed that you started at 15 because I don't know how I would have started any kind of extra help there given how expensive it can be. But that said, we'll get to that. Let's first get going. As I say before every show, I'm really bad at getting the show started because I hear everybody's stories and I just want to dig right in. But we should really start with the prompts so we can get Roberto drawing, and then we'll talk about all of it because he said a lot of interesting things that I want to dig into. That said, ignore these prompts. I'm going to clear them away because I've been looking at them, so it's cheating. I'm going to read them out, and then once I've read them out, you tell me if any of them speak to you. So, we have dancing shoes. What type of dancing shoes does your character have on, and what music are they listening to? Warehouse. The secrets that are taking place in an old abandoned warehouse. Sing along. A song you like that you think has hidden meanings. So you could tell I'm doing this live because I can't read half the time. The puzzle. Write something that the answer isn't known until the end, which I guess is just any mystery. And then green thumb. Something is growing. What is it? All right. So any of those speaking to you?
I mean, I do like the warehouse idea, but it was I was going to say Roberto. I feel like that's
Yes, that's my
yes.
name.
Yep.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I was hovering over and was like, no, it's got an S there for your name, so let's double check. What are you in the mood to draw tonight? Because one of the things that I've learned is that it's also very helpful to kind of like see what the artist wants to draw, what their interest is. Because if it's like, oh, well, they want to draw drama and you're expecting them to draw zombies and kaiju, that's not necessarily a good fit. So,
Well, I think I'm not gonna be helpful today because I'm up to do anything. When I come here to the podcast, it's, okay, let's see what they come up with. So I'm up for the challenge. So anything that you wanna do, it's awesome.
I'm like kind of in the mood to do something weird tonight. So what if we were to combine sort of like the warehouse idea and like the green thumb? Like
Right on.
what if it's this sort of idea where it's more of a environmental comic where we kind of see like it's this jungle, but then all of this jungle is contained in a box. Then we kind of like zoom out and we see that there's more of these and we go into another space. So it's sort of there's this building that has all of these different places inside of it and kind of see how that might work and maybe do some interesting stuff with framing. It's not necessarily a story, but let's do something interesting.
I'm down for that. Yeah. I have an image in mind that I'll tell you in a second. But first, I'm gonna say, Roberto, please share your screen. Yes. So, have you read? Are you a manga reader? Is where I should start.
Yeah, I do a whole podcast on One Piece.
Oh, amazing. So yes. How dare I? I got to do my research better. My apologies.
Mhm.
So yeah, Wild Strawberry is the one that came to mind immediately when you're talking about the warehouse with the green coming in. It's kind of reaching its conclusion now, so a lot of it's happening now. It's finally broken out of the setting it was originally in, the like school it was in. But
Mhm.
that image of like them kind of getting overtaken by the what do you call them, the jinkas or whatever, the all the plants. That's the image I have in my head now. I don't imagine Roberto's doing anything close to that, but as you're saying it, I'm like, I feel like I've seen this. So we have somewhere uh to compare with. I'm curious how close we get. Roberto, I don't imagine you've heard or seen of
No,
Wild Strawberry before. Yeah, I didn't
no,
think so. The-
sorry.
it's not your typical like it's a Shonen Jump thing. So I'm not surprised. I feel like not a lot of folks have heard of it. I'm not trying to be like a hipster or anything. I don't believe I know anything better than anybody else, but it just doesn't seem to have like hit as well as some of the more popular
They
manga out there.
they've
But
been kind of like struggling to figure out what their next like big three are, even though the big three is really a term that only originated like in the 2000s.
hmm yeah, and I will say I credit the whole like the what's the company there, Viz and all that. They have something new coming out every week. Like they're trying. It's not for lack of trying.
No,
Where on the big two side, like DC Marvel, like they're more about like let's just try the same thing in a different way. And let's just like one day it'll take, right? And then it like DC's been proven right with the whole Absolute line seems to be doing very well. Um, but on the Viz and what's the other one? Kid, oh man, help me out here.
Kodansha.
Kodansha. Yeah, they're always trying something new, which I appreciate. So if you're like, you always hear folks saying like, "Ah, comics are not the same; they're boring." Blah blah blah. Like, there's a lot of stuff happening. Again, depending on your definition of comics.
I, I
Um,
I think it's also funny because you get a lot of manga fans who are like, oh, everything is kind of like the same idea. Or it's like the same stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, it's because you're also reaching this generational point of everything is falling into itself because you're hiring the kids who grew up reading these series. And
mhm.
instead of like drawing from new points, it's you are like referencing the same things that have already been referenced.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's the fans of the ones you grew up reading are now writing it as well. So yeah, their influences are very clear in a lot of cases. Sometimes that can be fun. Sometimes it's like, again, if it's not just straight callbacks or straight like, here's my version of X, then uh, those can get kind of stale really quickly. Like you can only show me something I recognize so many times before it's just like, okay, I get it. Like you know the reference too, cool. But when people have something to say about it and say like this was my point of view when I grew up watching this or experiencing this and how it affected me and right and all that, that's where it gets exciting because now it's like it adds a whole new level of depth to that thing you enjoyed as a kid that maybe didn't have it. It was something that, you know, some creator threw out because they had a deadline. And now it means so much to this new generation that they're adding lore to it and they're adding like so much beyond what it originally had. Roberto, I like what you're doing already. I don't again, I don't know narratively where we're going with this, but visually speaking, it looks pretty cool. Luke, I see you're doodling too. Do you have your own rendition happening there? Or?
Yeah, I did more of a like large page idea. So let's get it to a point. So my thought is you kind of like start on a snapshot of this jungle and then you pull out to kind of show it's this larger thing. But then you've got like a panel here of you're seeing kind of, oh, this view of it from like a top down. This is like the lid of the box. There's a butterfly that flies out before this lid gets put on. The butterfly is still free. And then you see it's kind of escaped out into the world from this warehouse down at the bottom. And there's all these other boxes out there. So.
I don't see much.
Yeah.
Stop sharing.
Yeah. So
oh.
On our screens, it's really small, but
fair.
On the show, I will zoom in, so everyone watching will have no idea why we can't see this.
So it's like you've got a like shot of the jungle, and then you have like a top-down shot where it's the frame of the box. This butterfly flies out of the jungle, so theoretically it would appear in here as well. And then this lid is getting put on, and then the butterfly has escaped, but there's all these other boxes, so theoretically there's other spots in this dark warehouse. And just sort of it's hinting at something bigger. It's a bit of a narrative of like, it has escaped out there. And that's also me so slowly being like, oh yeah, it's really easy to sketch. It's really easy to just draw a bunch of panels. I've worked with a few collaborators who it's like, yeah, no, I appreciate that you do this. You've got no thoughts on like layout that are actually working. And I've got others who's like, oh, yeah, no, this is interesting. I hate doing the layout. So thank you for doing this. This is very loose compared to what I do a lot of the time. So
that's fair. Yeah. And that's is that something that you normally like when you're writing something, let's say, even if you don't share the layouts, is that the way you like think it out in your head? Are you drawing it and then saying this is how this story is going to go? Or are you writing it and then trying to reverse engineer it?
Usually it's a mix of the two. Also, do we want to turn the screen share back on?
Oh, thank you for catching that. Yes.
Thank you.
Can't miss what Roberto's doing.
I'm trying to recreate your sketch.
Right
on. Yeah, it really depends on who I'm working with and kind of like how I am presenting things to them, because I think one of the things that is important for like newer writers to do is to consider the page and consider the layouts and how things look. Because there's people who it's like, oh, they're going way too cinematographic.
Yeah, that sounds right.
They're approaching too much from like a directorial edge, but they aren't really thinking about how the flow is going to be. They aren't really thinking about like eye lines or especially where dialogue is going to fit in, or kind of like how you're moving things across the page. And that's something that I think is important to do. It also helps you to kind of like get into, here's what the beats are going to be for these pages. And there have been a few times where it's like, okay, well, The way that I'm like picturing the scene, I want to make sure that we're able to frame things so that the right person is speaking first on the panels that they appear to make things easier on the letterer. And kind of it's being a team spirit with what you do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I think you know, that's the biggest thing with newer writers is when they're especially when they're coming from like more often than not even on Reddit you'll see folks are like I wrote a screenplay and I would like this to be comic now. It's like, that's not as easily said as done, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to really go through it and think of it as a comic now. Like, you know, your one scene is 45 pages. You have to really think of the brevity and how like a comic is written versus a screenplay and what's
And
important and what's not.
and how you like capture action differently, how you emphasize differently the use of panel. And I I have gone the opposite direction of I grew up writing comics and then I've moved into in the past 2 years writing scripts. I think I've done 16 feature-length scripts at this point.
Oh wow.
Uh Nothing that I'm necessarily like, oh, I need to go and make producing this my main thing because like everything else in the world, it costs money and
Of
time.
course.
But like I'm actually sharing them with people. I'm in a really good community for reading. And theoretically, about the time this launches, we may have launched the podcast where it's literally just going to be, hey, me and like a few other people are writing scripts. What if we got people to read them and we did an episode where it's just reading the script and then another episode of kind of discussing the ideas, what works, what doesn't work, and put that online.
Nice. Nice. That's a really cool idea actually. I think it's like a writer's workshop but like via podcast.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. I like it. But yeah, how many scripts did you say? 16, 17?
I believe I'm at 16 if I count
My
some of
goodness.
the rewrites because I'm a person who's like, oh, if I'm going to rewrite something, I don't want to just change some words. So it's pretty substantial.
It's a page one rewrite. That's impressive though. That's the what is it? The kill your darlings, right? Like you're not precious with your ideas. You're like I'm throwing this out. I'm starting over. That's
No,
I
and
like it.
I think that's also another one of the problems that like a lot of creators have early on. It's like, oh, I have this great idea. It needs to be a 50-page series, and this is the only thing I need to tell them. It's like, okay, I've been here before. I've written my like, oh, here's a 40-page series that's going to be my amazing work, and you get into like 3 issues if you're lucky to find artists who are able to stick around for that long, and it's like, well, no, it still doesn't work. It still like needs you are going to as long as you continue to work, what you do in the future should be better than what you have done in the past. And you need that growth. And if this is really the one story that you absolutely feel is your purpose on earth to tell, you would theoretically want to put in the work to tell that the best way that you can. And I think that that is a challenge to a lot of people who have not done that. Back in 2009 or 10, I had started doing a webcomic called Social Fist, where it was like communist superheroes. It was sort of my weird, wacky take on like Watchmen, but also kind of like Cold War fear and a lot of things. And the first version of it, we got like 6 pages in, and the artist was like, sorry, I need to ask for more money. And I was like, okay, I
Oh
can't
no.
pay for that. The second version, we actually got like regularly updating the webcomic. And I was working with Rim Baru, who's really talented. He's done some work for Image and a lot of other networks. He did, or a lot of other publishers. He did the End Times with Brahman Ben with like James Asmus years ago. He's a Italian artist. I still love his work, still love to keep up with what he's doing. We did like 3 issues and I submitted it to publishers. None of them were really ready. I got a write up in
Oh
wizard.com when
wow.
that was still a thing as one of those like 5 writers to look for. And it was like, yeah, I'm working on this thing. And then he also had to be like, hey, I'm getting offered a lot more money. You can't imagine. I was like, yeah, no, I can't. I bear no ill will. Thank you for the opportunity. But like each time that I tried working on that story, which I still want to do and which is still like in my head, it turned out differently because you grow as a writer, you
Mm-hmm.
grow with what you're doing. I made the mistake of making the first issue of that second time completely wordless, which worked really well. But if you were trying to sell someone on a series, it's a really hard to sell to it's a really hard sell to do things that way.
Yeah, for sure. It's especially when you're early on. Again, it's the novice writers, the folly of I have an epic tome of 400 pages, and this is the story I was meant to write, and it's like, yeah, but it's gonna be bad. Like, even it's not even gonna be
Yeah.
bad, but like it won't be the same from the beginning to end because of how long that will take you, and then you will be upset with the beginning by the time you reach the ending. So get your reps in elsewhere. Think of a new story, a shorter story,
Learn
right? Yeah.
10-page mini comics are an amazing tool to use because it's 10 pages plus a front and back cover that is 12 pages, 4 sheets of paper when you fold it in half. That is something where if you can tell a good story, you can print that up by yourself for like $100, bring a bunch of copies to a comic convention, sell those, and you have something to show, hey, not only can you tell a story, write characters, and work with someone long enough to finish a book, but it's like telling a story that is complete and satisfying is so hard to do.
Oh yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's a really good exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even anthologies are a good way to offload some of that risk. You don't get, I think, doing what you said, doing the 10-page, like full front to back, like the covers, everything, figuring out distribution, doing all that will teach you much more than doing an anthology and throwing it off to someone. But
Yes.
if you're still timid and early on, it's not a bad way to, again, to offload some of that risk. And it does get you some exercise in pitching to people and getting your story very concise so that you can convince someone else that it's worth creating. So that has its own benefits. But in terms of the process front to back, you're right. Yeah, the best way to do it would be to just do it yourself, like as far as you can. And that'll show folks more than anything else, right? Pitching to an anthology is relatively easy. You've done it, you send it off, and then you wipe your hands, right? And you
Yeah.
hope it turns out. So it's different muscles you're stretching there. But yeah, it's doing it all on your own definitely makes sense. Roberto,
Yes, I
you
mean,
want to talk about
interrupting
the layout?
here. Yeah,
Yes.
let me know what you think, where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, I've been watching. I think it looks really good. Um, the one thing I'm just kind of seeing is sort of like the eye line, because if we are like following the butterfly as like the path along, part of me thinks that in the third panel, it might be interesting if we kind of like had it going from like top right and then back down to the bottom left. That way it's sort of we're following its path across this whole.
Yes, here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, maybe I start here. Or, or I think this here works. Yeah, maybe it should be.
I always say about this show, it's really fun to listen to, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah. Okay. So wait, I have a question about the boxes. That
Yeah.
so this is like a jungle or a woods. These woods are inside the box. So
Yeah.
it's like a miniature jungle or something, or these are giant boxes.
I think that it's maybe like the top of the box is like a portal into this other world, but it's a way of like containing the portal as something conceptual.
So okay, because I was doing like this robot is like closing the boxes and then they are transporting somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that works. I think it's like clear enough for what's happening, but there's a lot of questions for like, why is this happening? Where are these going? How is this happening? And I think that's what makes it interesting.
Okay. So this is just like a window to some other dimension or something like that in the
Mhm.
box.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so doesn't matter the scale because this could be like farther down.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Like it's a butterfly, so it's getting out wherever it's getting out, whether that's low or high.
Nice.
Makes more sense now. Okay. Thank you. I keep going.
All
No
right.
problem.
So we're unleashing him to do the detailed version of this now.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So let's talk about something you said early in your introduction. So you've been doing this since you were 15? How is
Uh,
that even possible?
I had a friend named Jeremy who we went to the same high school together. Actually, it might have been since I was 14. But basically, every day he would come to school and have like 3 or 4 pages of a comic that he had penciled together called Random Acts of. And it was like, without fail, this was his priority more than homework most of the time, for better or worse. And it was like, okay, you're doing this. I really like telling stories. Like, I had been on the creative writing team, and I was a teen. I needed an outlet. And so I started just making very poorly drawn comics. I'm looking around to see if I've maybe got my big binder of them somewhere where I won't need to be off camera for a while. But I would also draw like 3 or 4 just kind of simply penciled, very not quite stick figure, but kind of like primitive comics as well. And I started making my own big epic dealing with whatever was on my mind and kind of like using it as a creative outlet. And then that actually led me into studying graphic design for VOTech during my junior and senior year, and then going out to study graphic design. But by that point, I had realized I don't necessarily have the patience to fully finish comics pages in a way that would look professional enough that I would be happy with that. And that also gave me a lot of respect for, oh, that's why I would really prefer to work with an artist. I can respect the artist for the work that they're going to do, because I can pump out an idea very quickly and I might need to make some edits. But compared to the amount of time that it takes to work on a page, develop and finish everything, I think that it's a much bigger ask, and it requires stronger skills as an artist than it does necessarily as a writer.
Yeah, it's a level of dedication that I say every episode that I never have. I I threaten to learn to draw, and I just don't, because it's so a theme that we always talk about on the show is it's having the courage to fail. Um, and it's where you're willing to do that, where you're willing to fail and continue on. It kind of tells you what path you're going down. Because as you said, it's like, it's easier with writing. And I would find that if you talk to a lot of artists who are like the pure artist side, who are like, I tried writing, but I just can't. Like I write and it just doesn't sound the way it sounds in my head or the way I picture it, which is usually what an artist would say. So, and it's the same thing. It's like they're not willing to uh just write and be bad at it and then figure out what's wrong and correct it the same as writers would do with the art. It's like the image in my head isn't what's showing up on the page. And the answer is, well, yes, because there are a whole host of fundamentals you have to master before you can make that image in your head even close to what you see on the page, right? And it's the willingness to struggle to get there that really makes a difference. It tells you where you're going to land. So myself, I feel very similarly. I tried. I'm still trying to learn to draw, but it's just one of those things. I don't do it every day because I get frustrated, and then I take a break, and then I come back to it, and I make a small bit of progress, and then I get frustrated. But in the meantime, I'm writing every day, right? And that's something that over years I feel like I've gotten much better at. But it's because of that, because I'm doing it every day.
Yeah, I am able to doodle dangerously, is what I'd say. I understand.
I like that term.
I understand a lot of fundamentals. I can do some basic graphic design stuff, but it does not necessarily satisfy my desire to tell stories as much as writing can. And especially finding collaborators and other people to help bring it to a higher state.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the other part of writing, in terms of like comics and all that, is has nothing to do with writing. And it sounds like you're very like even your example of what you should do in finishing a comic
Mhm.
and shopping it out and doing all that. How do you feel about that end of the of being a writer in comics, which usually means you do the first part, you send off the script, and then when it comes back from the artist, it's still your problem, right? It's your problem to if they didn't color it, to go find that colorist, to go get the letterer, to make sure basically the comic gets finished and turned into a comic rather than a bunch of loose pages of art. So
Mhm.
how do you feel about that side of things?
I mean, I've done a lot of project management, so I'm used to it. It's like if I need a letterer to handle things quickly, I know who I'm going to turn to. If I have a colorist needed for a project, I have a few people who I know who I could work with. Like you build a roster of people who you know, both friends and like industry folks who you know who you can like turn to when you need to get things done. But I'd also say that if you are a writer who is trying to like make their way into the industry, I think picking up those skills is something that can be your introduction, especially if you find that you have a skill for lettering, which is something that can make or break a book,
Hmm.
or coloring. Chris Burnham, I believe, had started off as a comic writer, wasn't getting enough work, moved into coloring, became like a Eisner winning comic creator. I think he'd done Pax Americana, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be totally getting this wrong. And then like got some opportunities to write comics as well.
Yeah,
But
that's some great advice. It's the side door, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's looking for the way in through the front. They want to be known for the thing they're known for. But yeah, sometimes the line isn't always a straight line, all right?
Mhm.
And it's recognizing that. Yeah, it's pretty smart.
And learning to work with people and kind of learning to kill part of that ego inside of you.
Yes, yes. So that was the big thing. So I'm a film school kid. That was my
Mhm.
original dream and all that. And everybody there wanted to be the director. That was the you're either the director or the screenwriter. No one else wanted to do anything else. That was so we just had a room full of directors and writers. Nobody wanted to be the one behind the camera. Nobody wanted to be, a grip or any of the lighting crew. None of that. And the ones that actually are working today, the ones that I know have moved on, are the ones that actually decided, you know what? I want to learn how to put together the camera.
Mhm.
I went to film school. Like this was a long time ago. We were still shooting on film. It was a thing to know how to put the camera together. But the idea was they were specialists and they learned their craft. And we had a couple of people who said they were going to focus on audio, and they just went to the audio side of things, which again was like, but it's film. It's a visual medium. Don't you want to learn that? It's like, well, audio's a big part of it. If the audio's bad, then the visual doesn't matter, right? And them taking that on and learning is what actually allowed them to do this as a career long term, where all of the screenwriters and directors like myself found something else to do because there's only so many of those jobs, right?
It- a lot easier to have steady work that is always going to be required than looking for like the leading role.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's like it's not even a matter of there being a lack of those roles available, although
Mhm.
that is very true, but it's how do I know to trust you that you can do it when like it's too much responsibility to give you sight unseen. So how can you prove to me that you are capable of being a professional, of showing up on time, of understanding how a set works and all that kind of stuff if
Mhm.
you haven't shown it to me before? So to your example with getting something together, it's that. It's I've done this beginning to end. I've worked with other people. We've actually accomplished something. Here's my proof that I'm a professional, right? And that doesn't always happen. I've had that in my corporate career even. Folks that I used to manage a large team, almost 40 technicians. And, when promotions came about, who would I promote? The ones who were almost doing the job already. They
Mhm.
understood that how the way you're going to prove that you can do the job is to do the job,
Yes.
right? And not everyone understood that. So I had, a couple complaints. Why didn't you choose me? Uh, you know, well, I don't know that you can do it. It's like, well, if you gave me the job, I would show you. That's not how it works.
Yeah, you need to show the aptitude to get the opportunities to do more of it, which can is something that I both hate, but I also understand because I've been on both sides of that where it's like, yeah, you need to be reliable to be relied on.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, similarly, if you do actually want to make something creative, you need to find opportunities for these outlets that we aren't letting the sort of creative side of you lie fallow, and that you're continuing to grow and make contacts, and you actually have a like, well, here's what I have been working on these past few years that are related to this, because that's one of those things where it's like, well, I'd love to work in X industry, but if you haven't been doing anything related to that, you have to give up some of your free time to either focus on that or figure out a path to make that work.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even that complicated. Like, uh, I'm always shocked at how many times you'll see artists that want comics work and then only have like covers as their portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or action shots, or but it's like I need to see like Roberto's doing now. He's drawing a box,
Yep.
but but it's the fact that like he has the skill and the ability to do this to make
Mm-hmm.
this convincing that now we can tell a story, even though this panel on its own, right, without context and without anything, is a relatively boring panel. It's a box. Again, the context actually makes it interesting, so it's not a great example because what's happening in the box is kind of wild. But it's a box. It's a box with a robotic arm,
Yeah.
and art student would be mortified to have to draw this.
Yeah. It's, you don't always get to draw people shooting guns and blowing things up. Sometimes you just have to draw people having a bad day and talking about it.
Yes, yes, exactly, right? Two people sitting at a table in a kitchen, and make that exciting.
And I think that's one of those things where that's also why it is important when you are starting out to also like find out what anyone you're going to be collaborating with wants to draw and feels that they are good at drawing. Because again, it's, you don't want to put too much on them if you don't know what you're doing this for. You don't know what the end point is going to be. It's not always going to end up with you getting a comic. Sometimes you get 7 pages of a 20-page book and that's the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, again, so Roberto's my example here. He's very adaptable. He's done all kinds of different stories, but I know what I can reach out to him for sure. He's got a really cool like painterly style. So, I had an anthology with a noir cover. I knew who I was going to. And I think and it's the artist thing again, the novice artist side of thing. We're talking a lot of art novice writers. Novice artist thing is how do I get a style? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, the style comes over time. It comes with your experience. It comes with everything you've put your portfolio together and what you become known for. But everybody wants to start with the style, right? I
Yeah.
want to draw like Darwin Cook, like cool, but maybe you gotta get everything else, in place before you can say that or attempt that. But yeah, it's a lesson that I feel like it's evergreen. There's always new art students that always seem to have the same start that I talk to a lot.
I think there's also the problem where there can be inherent talent and there can also be effort and work that you put
Hmm.
into developing yourself. And I think it's the same with writing, drawing, coloring, lettering, anything that you do, as long as you are committing yourself to it and you're also learning how to push yourself and you're striving to improve, you are going to improve. I think there's also kind of a way that you can easily plateau, which is something that I think I've seen more from kind of like webcomics people, where if they aren't necessarily pushing themselves, they're just kind of happy where they are, there is stagnation or they kind of fall too much into a style and they aren't necessarily able to exist outside of that. Though the same thing can also happen to writers where they only write one sort of thing and it's kind of like, sorry, Garth Ennis, we're kind of tired of your whole shtick.
Yeah, yeah. Prove that you can do something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
That you have some breadth. Um, but yeah, so for that brings me to I had a thought
Mm-hmm.
for yourself. So do you find that you gravitate to one kind of genre or one type of like story, or maybe not one type of story, one type of genre, one or one area that you feel most comfortable in, or do you kind of do everything? Where do you find yourself?
I've ended up doing a lot of horror, even though I'm not a big horror person, just because it's something where there's a big audience for it. But like when I was kidding myself, 10 years, 10, time is a horrifying monster that is consuming us
That's
all.
happened a couple times today. I've noticed.
Yeah. Like back when I was getting most started, it would kind of be like, okay, we're going to work on something. What would you like to draw? And that's how I ended up doing a gothic romance about a natural fission reactor.
Okay.
So it's like a period piece where all these people are having this drama, but also they're dying of radiation poisoning.
That's like a sci-fi noir uh
Yeah, like
romantic.
it's more like haunting in a way. Uh do you have something to add, Roberto? Or
Sorry?
oh, I was just asking. You were kind of you were doing the sort of like look that you had last time when you had something to add or
No,
contribute.
no,
So I
sorry.
just
I was looking pictures of butterflies.
Reference is happening.
the magic of comics.
Yeah.
Mhm. Uh,
Nice.
yeah. Yeah, like sort of the idea of what do you want to draw? What interests you? Give me a challenge. Like that appeals to me because it's like uh, a collaboration that I've done with Charha, who is another Finnish artist. We did a book called The Tomb or the Gift of the Necromancer, where it's more of like a very D&D branded fantasy thing about a group of adventurers. One of their members dies. They don't have enough money to resurrect them. So they're just going to bring them back as a sentient undead instead, and kind of the ethics of that, the morality of that. And it was like, yeah, no, you love drawing sort of monsters and sort of this inverted stuff. So yeah, let's work on something like that. We're working on another series or another mini comic currently that is about sort of political protest by goblins and ogres against their evil lord in a big tower because they're not really sure what's going to happen to them next, and they aren't really sure about how much their management cares for them. And just stuff like that gets me to make weird things. Deer hunting, the comic that I put out last year with Siri, she had gone on an island in Finland for an artist residency that was a former abandoned military base. And it had a deer population that was brought because the people who had been on the island before the military brought the deer over and they weren't native. And so they kind of like bred all over the island and then kind of took it over and then they had to wipe them out. And so she was like, okay, I'm interested. Do you want to give me some sort of script for this? And it was like, yeah. What are you thinking? She's like, maybe like there's something gay between the soldiers. And instead I like kind of took that idea and took it further than she expected. So it's sort of this kind of dreamlike treatise on our relationship with nature and kind of like how we influence it, how it influences us in sort of these ways that we define ourselves and we are defined by the history of things. And I like interesting ideas like that. But also just like last year, I was also working on what was essentially a Dragon Ball inspired parody comic where it's, oh, old school Dragon Ball where Goku's going to the fighting tournament and there's that guy who's fighting the first round. He's like, yeah, I'm the strongest fighter in the world. And then Goku just beats him like a chump. What if that guy was actually the strongest human fighter in the world who has had his entire life ruined in that one fight? And sort of what if you are going to try and come back from that level of failure, and sort of a alternative take on Dragon Ball with a lot of proxy characters and sort of the concept of what it means to be human and sort of is there a way that you lose your humanity in a pursuit of being the greatest person you can possibly, or the strongest person you can possibly be.
That's a really cool take on it. I like it. It's it's always the undeveloped, the the furniture characters out there,
Mm-hmm.
right? That it's like, well, they're a person too. Like their point of view might be entirely different, but it's, they're done for a gag. And it's like, yeah, there's so much there. It's like, imagine how their life was turned upside down.
Yeah.
I really like that approach. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's unfortunately a book that is on indefinite hold, probably canceled, but that's
Oh,
comics. I mean, you
yeah.
build up a collection of this would have been great, but the world is what it is. Like you can put your whole heart into something and it just doesn't turn out the way you wish it could have.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah, we were talking about not being precious with ideas and that, and that's where it really comes true as well, right? That maybe you've even seen something through to, almost reality, and still, it's just not quite there. I think a lot of people felt that with who was it? Like Action Lab, I think closed, and a bunch of
Yeah.
people had properties locked up there for years now.
Hmm.
There are many examples. That's just the one that came to the top of my head. But yeah, you just never know, right? Like it could seem like this is the one, and then something happens, and that's it,
Yeah.
right?
Or like the sheet that I had shown earlier, where it was we were a new publisher, we had like 7 titles, almost everyone had been published or had a like good following locally in the community. Diamond doesn't pick up the books, it all falls apart. I made a choice because I wasn't sure where it was going, where I was writing Heroes International, which was sort of the team superhero book. It was like, okay, I don't know how long I'm going to have this opportunity. I'm going to write everything as a standalone story that adds to something bigger. That way I can not only have complete stories once I'm done, but I can sell anyone on any issue based on the elevator pitch.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
That's the business mind we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
writing's easy, relatively, but that's impressive for sure.
It's also like planning for a future that you don't know what's going to happen. I had over 40 issues loosely planned out and 2 more issues written out for it. It's like, yeah, company fell apart. They moved on with another writer when it changed publishers. It is what it is. I have 2 complete stories that I can share.
Nice.
Mhm.
It's so frustrating. But again, I think it's the ability not only to move on from a piece, but to be able to pivot and have something else to pivot to, right? Again, the novice with the 400-page story. If that one doesn't work out, what's next, right? And
Yeah. Also, how much of that 400-page story have you actually written?
yes,
Because
yes, more often than not, it's an idea.
yeah, like that's one of those things where it's like at the kill your darlings idea that you had mentioned earlier. The process of writing is killing the perfect idea that is in your head, but you can't touch an idea. You can touch something that you've actually written for better and for worse.
Yes, exactly, right? Like and until you know like what it will look like on the other end of that process, because we've talked about, you might start a story one way, and then over time it changes, and then if you go to rewrite it, it changes again and again and again. If you're talking about something of that length, it's bound to end differently than you initially planned, right? Even if you have it very strictly outlined and very strictly like this is the ending, I guarantee you by the time you get there, it's not where you expect it to be because you're a different person. The person that started that and ended it are two totally different people generally,
Or
right?
or like the idea of if there are people reading this, their reaction to things can be very different. They can influence you in ways that you don't expect to happen. Like if a character becomes really popular and it's like, oh, they were just supposed to be a background character, but now I guess this goat man needs a bigger piece. He was just going to say a catchphrase.
Yeah, for sure. And that's some of the joy of like a serialized storytelling, right?
Mhm.
Not having again throwing the 400 page book down and saying this is all my thoughts at once. It's doing it over time and seeing who reacts to what and what you enjoy, which again you may think you enjoy one thing, and then as you write it you're like, this character is boring, I actually like this one more. Right?
Yeah, or if you grow as you're going, hopefully you grow in a positive way where your mind changes as opposed to doing a Cerberus.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a whole different conversation, but yes.
Yeah.